spending, for salaries for the military, to building up military equipment and supplies. They also do the things like the, bridge to nowhere kind of stuff too. I'm not saying they're totally innocent, but this is a gag level injustice to the next generation, or whatever generation finally has to pay this off. Plus it tells you what Democrats think their job is. Their job is to be Santa Claus for every single wish list item that's ever been out there. Their job is to keep the voters happy because they think they get votes, and they do get votes, but they think they get votes by funding things that we cannot afford, that we do not need, that we don't even have anything close to money to cover in the budget. I run out of words. It is so ridiculous, so over the top, and yet you have the Democrats doing this. I don't know what's going to happen on Friday. There are some people pushing back on some elements of it, but the whole point of the Democrat mission is to get this passed without any possible ability of the Republicans to interfere with this gluttonous, wasteful, outrageous bill. Again, they do it because they can, and they do it because they think they're buying votes. And sadly, in America, for some Americans, they are right. They are buying votes. They're buying future support. And in a time when the American people have been out of work due to extraordinarily excessive and draconian government regulation, keeping people home when they didn't need to be home, keeping people out of work when they didn't need to be out of work, flattening the airline, flattening travel, controlling the airlines, all of that, the people have been suffering for the last year. And the Democrat majority answer in Washington is a pittance, relatively speaking, a pittance for the people, and massive bloated spending on pet projects for everyone on their side of the aisle. Atrocious, outrageous, you run out of words. And we'll watch this. I'll talk to you next week about what happens on Friday, but there is seemingly no one stopping this wild, train out of control, barreling down the tracks, putting America over the cliff to economic ruin. No stopping apparently in sight. But we'll keep tabs on it. Okay, last segment is a very, very quick segment. We'll quickly tell you. So this is so amazing. So here we sit in Texas. If you paid attention to the news last week, in Texas we had actually had 2 or maybe 3 massive snowstorms. We had, roads shut down, people lost power, 4 million or more Texans lost power. Many people lost water. People are still boiling water. We had, it was a big mess. And I want to just hit 3 points about this. First of all, it's beautiful here today. Texas is beautiful. It's almost like sunbathing weather. Not that I sunbathe, but people do. It's almost sunbathing weather. It is so nice. It's beautiful and sunny, kind of a normal Texas winter. So we all got through the storm, and I certainly want to say thank you to everyone who helped America and helped Texas, and many people did. I want to say thank you to all of them. Thank you for the generosity. I do want to talk a little bit about the generosity thing. So I grew up in a small town upstate New York, and many of my friends were Italian. The town is largely Italian, a very big Italian population. And so one of my friends who was Italian, her grandmother had this saying she would say to us, which was, you should do a good deed every day, but it doesn't count if you tell anyone. It doesn't count if you tell people. The point is, be good because it's the right thing to do. Do something nice without telling people. I thought it was a great thing. And I've actually remembered that my whole life and thought about that. It's a true test of, doing your pure heart motive just to help people, not to get credit. So back to our Texas storm. I want to first just commend the great goodness of the American people and the people of Texas. I mean to tell you, everybody and their brother is doing everything they can think of. They are getting water bottles delivered. Companies are donating food. Restaurants donating food. Stores donating food and water for people who couldn't turn on their power, didn't have their stoves or ovens working. I mean, the generosity was just it could, bring tears to your eyes. Massive generosity. Everywhere you looked, you had people donating, and you had donation centers overrun with donations. You had people opening various big public buildings, like my friend's church opened and made themselves a warming center. And so if you didn't have heat, you couldn't, you're worried about freezing. You could get to a warming center. They would take you in. They would provide food, a cot, water, a restroom. I'm not sure about showers, but at least restrooms. And these warming centers opened up all over the state. The great goodness of the people of America and the people of Texas was evident on steroids last week. I mean, truly, tears to your eyes level kindness and generosity. There were people trying a lot to score political points about this generosity. I mean, the people who were, out-of-state politicians showing up, doing selfies. Oh, look at me, I'm in Texas. And look at me, I'm donating this water. Aren't I a great person? That kind of stuff. And, I'm still grateful for the donations. Food, water, bedding, blankets, whatever people needed. I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful more for the people who didn't have to tell you about it all the time and put pictures up of themselves, bragging about how really extraordinarily generous they were. They just did the right thing. There were many ways to give. You could give online. If they'd say, if you can't, bring water over, can you make a donation? You could go to the grocery store, and they had, at the checkout, like they always have, donate, food to this, bag of food for here, or make a financial donation to the food banks or to the warming centers. I mean, all these people running businesses and private citizens, just enormous generosity. And that is the spirit of the American people. And I will say, I often talk about in this show the great goodness of the founding ideas of America. And I mean this from the depth of my soul. America is the most extraordinary nation in the world. Extraordinary because of the founding ideas of America. And I talk about them on my show, the ideas in the Declaration, the Constitution, the whole idea the founders had of a nation honoring the freedom of the individual, the right of each person to live in freedom, and the goal of government to protect that freedom. But I want to connect that to the American goodness. The founding ideas of America, all of that inspiring people to be good, to pursue their dreams, to work hard, and the Christian ethos, the Judeo-Christian ethos that says you love your neighbor as yourself. You love your enemies. You care for people. That ethos has pervaded America's culture since our founding. And the goodness and the generosity of people in America, and I'm not saying there are generous people all over the world. There are kind and generous people in every country, kind and generous people of every race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, who do wonderful things. This is not unique to America, but it's extraordinary in America. It's extraordinarily noticeable in America. The great goodness of generosity and kindness and caring. They had stories like somebody's delivery truck broke down in some street. And I don't know all the detail of it, but I know the people who were in the house there that happened to have power, or at least they had warmth because they had the fireplace on. They brought the driver in and said, hey, you can stay here if you want. Fed, cooked, hung around, made friends, played games. They waited it out. The stories like that were abundant. And I'm just saying, I connect the founding ideas of America, the broad founding Judeo-Christian foundation of America, with the goodness you see. America's goodness and generosity is not happenstance. It is directly tied to the goodness of America. And one last thing I was going to say on this point, and then we'll wrap up, which has to do with climate change. And so you've seen, I'm sure, that AOC popped off saying that Texas had problems during this horrific, once in a generation or not even that much storm, because we don't embrace, climate change, and we don't embrace sustainable energy. And I just want to put the lie to that. Texas is the hub, the center of energy production in America. Because of pressure from leftists and climate change, we had a policy in place that said all power produced by solar power and by windmills, wind power, the energy grid, the Texas energy grid, has to buy that as soon as it's produced. So we have to buy that first. to put it in the grid. And it's great. We have, 20% in good times, 20% of our energy is from sustainable sources. But because the obligations are to buy that first, other energy producers, more traditional energy producers, when summer is over, when we all need tons of energy because it's so hot here, those energy producers cut back. And so they didn't have sufficient energy ready to flood into the system as we had the winter storm hit. And when the winter storm came along, the ice, the cold, the freezing temperatures, they froze up the windmills, so they're producing exactly zero. And they had a casing, a casing of ice, a covering, a crust of ice on top of all of the solar panels. So the solar panels were not absorbing sunlight and they weren't producing anything. So what failed Texas was the renewable energy sources of wind and solar. That was the failure. They could not keep producing because of cold weather, and the traditional energy producers had to ramp up to get ready to try to return power to Texas. That is an overly simplistic description, but all I want to say, wrapping up today, is this: the idea that AOC, the socialist, Marxist, communist, goofball airhead, says that the problem in Texas was that we didn't have enough reliable, sustainable energy. Oh, we had plenty. We do really well in Texas, actually, using wind energy and solar energy. It's not that we didn't have enough of that. It's that we got pushed around by the energy climate alarmists to have a policy that said all that had to be used first, and then we were. And there were other failings. I don't want to act like this was the whole problem, but to understand the level of pure felony level lunacy, felony level idiocy out of AOC and others, saying somehow Texas would have been better off in this storm if we had more wind energy and solar energy, which both froze up and disappeared, is felony stupid, felony idiocy. And I do feel strongly about this because she is trying to score. Talk about someone not following my Italian grandmother's advice. AOC just out there, pictures of herself. Here I am raising money. And I appreciate she raised money. If she followed my friend's Italian grandmother advice, she would have raised money and shut her mouth. But she didn't. She raised money and went running to every conceivable news outlet, say, look at me, I raised money to help Texas. And I'd like to slam them because this wouldn't have happened had they had more sustainable energy. Pure hogwash. Pure hogwash. The way Texas got through last week and what we will do going forward is because the great spirit of Texas and the people of America is full of love for their neighbor, care for their neighbor, looking out for their neighbor. This is what you saw all over the news in Texas last week, was the goodness of the American people, the goodness of the people of Texas taking care of each other. And the idea that Texas, we're going to have to make changes in policy, and everyone's already talking about who gets fired, and all of the out-of-state board members of ERCOT have resigned. I get all that. We'll talk about that another day. I just want to talk about the spirit of Texas, the spirit of America, the American goodness, and all that was seen as just a beautiful thing last week in Texas. I am grateful for everyone who donated things. I am grateful for people who opened their homes. Grateful for people who donated money, time, energy, but I wish there was a lot more of the actual, spirit of my friend's Italian grandmother, who just said, you help people and you don't tell anybody about it. Instead of virtue signaling their largesse all over social media, kind of detracts from the argument that they are actually really caring people. Some folks involved are caring only about advancing their political fortunes, and that is not at all an attractive thing. At the close of every show, I tell you what the stories we talked about today matter to you. So we started today talking about stages and shapes of tyranny. Too many Americans believe tyranny only means troops at the door at midnight, and therefore anything less can be shrugged off. The right response to tyranny is hiding from it, not openly challenging it. Oh, that was another thing I was going to tell you about. A friend who was saying we shouldn't really worry about this, all these regulations involved with COVID. You know, just have a secret gathering in your home. Make sure your curtains are closed. And I was saying, no, not good enough. We're not going to cower in our homes. But tyranny creeps in through the promises of safety and security. Example number 1, questioning election results is now being called white supremacy and the fault of January 6th and domestic terrorism, justification for ending free speech. And many Americans seem to go along with this. Example number 2, COVID police state enveloping the country, eviscerating freedoms, but justified for public safety. Ex-Clinton staffer Naomi Wolf says this is step 10 of 10 steps to fascism. By the time the troops are at the door at midnight, it's too late to resist tyranny. Americans need to wake up now, resist now. And we talked about tyranny, media, speech, banks, and elections. Democrat congressmen bully cable providers to drop Fox, OAN, and Newsmax. After 4 years of Democrats questioning the 2016 election result, and it was 4 years of it, Democrats moving to make questioning the 2020 election result an act of domestic terrorism. Obama's Operation Choke Point, pressuring banks to stop working with businesses unfavored by leftists, such as gun sellers, now being reviewed for reinstatement after Trump removed that rule and put in place that we have to have we don't discriminate, we don't encourage banks to discriminate based on whether we like their policies of their customers. H.R. 1 is the federalizing of elections and enabling of documented election fraud mechanism. A radical left government is doing radical left things. Do Americans vote for this? Did Americans vote for this? And on COVID budget busters, Wall Street Journal says $1 trillion out of $1.9 trillion COVID relief is not for COVID. A leftist wish list of progressive spending, bailing out blue states for extending lockdowns and higher unemployment, all dependent on Americans not knowing or not caring. Will they or won't they? I'm going to say they will care. And last one, I believe we have one more, and that is the Texas storm, climate change, and American goodness. Texas weather has turned dramatically. Thankfully, spring warmth is everywhere. Windmills and solar power are obviously useless in a crisis of no wind or sun and frozen, covered with ice, but leftists want to double down on them. Ted Cruz and AOC are not the story. Ted Cruz, by the way, I could get off this another day. Ted Cruz did nothing wrong. I was sorry to see he got pushed around by the left. But anyway, Ted Cruz and AOC are not the story. Remember the wisdom of the Italian grandmother, my friend's Italian grandmother. Do the right thing, and it doesn't count if you tell anyone about it. Texans did the right thing for their fellow Texans, and that should be the story. As I close out the show for this week, I want to remind you, number 1, our website is americacanwetalk.org. You can go to that website. You can hit subscribe. You get the once a week newsletter. It comes out usually on Friday or for sure by Saturday or Sunday. Links to everything we did the previous week. So please go to America Can We Talk and subscribe. Number 2, I'm going to ask Matt the Wonderful if you can find that slide, Matt, that has the text 53445 thing while I'm doing the next thing. So go to the website and subscribe. And number 2, at the same website, you can hit the button that says donate. This show is funded by viewers. It's listener sponsored. So if you like this show, you want it to stay on air, which believe me, I don't ever want to stop talking about preserving America, I would really appreciate you consider financial donation. You hit the donate button on the website. You can go to one time or a recurring donation. Truly helps out a great deal. Also, we're starting in April of this year, starting the first Thursday of April. We're starting Thursdays, the members only. We're starting a membership thing. I saw a couple of emails asking me, where is it in your website? We'll have that up soon. We'll be all set to roll with it on our website. And it's it's a very inexpensive membership. It's $5 a month or $50 a year. And you can have the Thursday only show. It'll be only on the website, americacanwetalk.org. You can watch it on the website, and it'll be a very different show on Thursdays. It'll be interactive. You'll be able to text in questions, email questions. You can email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com, americacanwetalk@gmail.com. Send me questions ahead of time. I'll quite often have a guest. I'll have Matt the Wonderful in here with me. We're using a different studio too, but Matt will be here sometimes. And you can text in questions, and it's going to be more, the Thursday show is going to be a conversation between me and my listeners. And so, looking over at this, to stay in touch with America Can We Talk during this time, in the 2 line, go to your text messaging on your cell phone to stay in touch, so you can text in questions too. Go to the 2 line, enter 53445 in the 2 line, and put as your message, America. It comes right to me, and we'll be off to the races, being directly connected. And I'll close out by saying, I appreciate so much every one of you for listening to this show. I appreciate your listening, you're sharing it, you're telling your friends about it. We are at a time, there's a tremendous need for patriots to be united, to be communicating, to be listening to each other, to be part of the American political conversation about preserving America, the most extraordinary experiment in human liberty ever to bless this earth. I'm Debbie Georgatos, and this is America Can We Talk. It's a show I do to speak up for America, because America matters. And I'll talk to you next time.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.